All right, well, welcome everyone. First and foremost, I just want to thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedules to join us here today for our February Accelerate Series webinar. This month's topic, we are focusing on how to use Asset Map in client meetings. Really going to be providing you with some strong best practices to set you up for success, whether you've used Asset Map in a client meeting yet, or perhaps you have not yet to do so. We're going to either leave you here with some great takeaways that you can make sure to keep in mind if you're already hosting meetings and including the asset map in them. And perhaps if you have not yet had the opportunity to do so, you'll be inspired to certainly use this as a jumping off point for moving forward. So let me address a couple housekeeping things here before we go ahead and get started. This is going to be recorded. Roughly an hour or so after our program ends today, you will be receiving an email with that recording. So if you need to jump towards the end or something comes up, please just know that you will get this in a recording. In that same email, we're also going to provide you with some important links of what's coming next and some opportunities for you to kind of share some feedback with us. I will, of course, address those at the end, but just in case you do jump a little bit early, please make sure to really look over that email and we'll go ahead and get started. So everyone will be muted for the recording quality. That being said, you should see a questions area within the GoToWebinar menu. If you have any questions all throughout today, please do not hesitate to type them in. My colleague has joined me here today and he's going to be assisting and making sure that any questions that come through we get answered, and I'll introduce us both in just a moment here. But I just want to stress that your questions are important to us, and I would highly encourage you that if you have one as we continue to continue on through the training today, to please submit any questions you have into the Q&A. So that being said, let's start off with introductions. My name is Leah Jean McHenry. I'm the Senior Training Manager over here at Asset Map. I've been in the fintech industry for a little over 5 years, previously worked at eMoney Advisor. If you've been joining me over the course of the last 9 to 10 months, we've been hosting this Accelerate series. We host a new one every single third Thursday of the new month on a new topic. So I'm really happy again that you've joined us here today. And I'm very fortunate because my fantastic colleague Brad Janicki is on the line with us as well. He is our customer success advisor, and he is going to be the one really manning any questions that come through. And I'll, of course, check in with him periodically. And if there are any that are applicable for the group, we'll certainly want to make sure that we address them. So let's dive into our agenda today. Really what we want to talk about is, where does Asset Map fit? We're going to spend a few minutes kind of talking about, we recognize that Asset Map is a little bit of a different platform, and it's rightfully so, and it's an incredible tool. So we definitely want to spend a little bit of time talking about where it fits. In addition, we then want to talk about the importance of introducing Asset Map for the first time. One of the key things about using Asset Map in a client meeting is we first need to be able to introduce what Asset Map is, and then we can continue to use it with our clients in meetings, every meeting moving forward. But really making sure that we're comfortable introducing it is going to be important. We're then going to hop into the application and spend some time talking about best practices for presenting live in client meetings. And remember, Asset Map has been designed to work in all environments, whether you choose to do a meeting remotely, digitally, in person, up on the big screen, you name it. We are optimized to be able to functionally work in every single client meeting, no matter how you choose to have it. So we're going to certainly address some best practices depending on the types of client meetings that you may be looking to have. And then we'll kind of wrap up with some tips regarding target maps. So I know a big question that we often get is, well, how do I bring in the target maps piece? When do I, how do I really introduce what they are? What if they don't ask me to run any kind of analysis? I'm going to give you some tips on how to really bring target maps into the conversation using some of the different frameworks that we have built into Asset Map. We'll, of course, conclude with some support and resources, and then I'll always check in with Brad at the end to see if we have any outstanding questions. Please keep in mind that regarding your questions, if you type anything in that's very case specific, we may have to follow up with you. Just know that we will. But again, all questions are welcomed, and please use that questions feature within the GoToWebinar menu to do so. All right, so let's start here. It's really important for us to start by addressing where Asset Map fits. And I want you to remember that Asset Map is so much more than a software, it's a process. Asset Map as a whole is a process. That being said, we get it. We know that Asset Map is a little bit different than the other tools out there because it is what everybody's looking for. It's the visualization everyone wants. And we know that the question does often come up, well, where does this fit? So the reality is that it's almost an attitude thing. We believe that you have to have a solid recognition of what the consumer's experience is first. Consumers today, they want to be engaged, and through being engaged, then buy, not being convinced and sold. And we've seen this change over the course of the last several years. Amazon is a perfect example of a company who does that. They send you emails and they engage you by saying, I think you might like this, right? They engage you through promotion, and then you're encouraged to then buy. And we truly believe in best interest advice and fiduciary here at Asset Map. And while this cartoon is a perfect example, right? Here is an advisor who has really dove into those really technical planning pieces like Monte Carlo, model portfolio theory, longevity. And these are important items, but most clients really are just looking for clarity that they are on track, and they want fast, they want simple and superior service. And remember that things can change drastically over time. It's this idea of, hey, Brad, can you tell me what the weather is going to be like 20 years from today? Now, we can't be certain. We can certainly make an estimation. We can take a look at, historically what the weather was like, you know, during those months and things like that. But really, at the end of the day, it's an estimation. And what is really important is it's helpful to show folks where they are today and an analysis of what they need to do today to move the needle in the right direction. And Asset Map provides exactly that. You can use the Asset Map report always in every single client meeting to show them, here's where we are today. You can update the information live. You can make sure that everything is correct. Together, you can then fill in gaps. And then, not to mention that you can continue to run analysis through the use of target maps to make sure that our clients are on track for those goals, for those unplanned events that, while none of us hope that any of those things happen, it's certainly important that if we want to make sure that our families are taken care of, we need to make sure that we are running those analysis for every single client. What happens if a loss of life occurs or you become disabled? Do we have a plan in place? These are the types of questions that we need to be asking, and you'll be able to do that quickly and efficiently using Asset Map, and we're going to provide you some best practices all throughout today. Now, before we do that, let's tie this into client expectations. We truly believe that it's this classic idea regarding client expectations of clients want to know that you know me, know my situation, and know my options. So where does this fit? Well, the asset maps themselves prove that you know your clients, because you're going to make sure that you gather everything that they have. And some of that might be that you're going to send them the discovery interview link, and that's how you're going to add them into Asset Map initially, and then you'll fill in the gaps there together. Perhaps this is a client you've been working with for quite some time. You already have all the information that you need. Well, then you can just go in and add them as a household into Asset Map. You can add all of their information. The idea is that the Asset Map proves that you know your client, because you're going to use it in every single client meeting to make sure that there's not anything missing, and that every single time we meet, right, me and the client, we want to make sure that we're on the same page. Then comes the know my situation aspect, which ties directly to target maps. The purpose of a target map is to illustrate if a household is either funded, underfunded, or overfunded to meet the desired cash flow given certain assumptions. So we can use target maps to really pose that question of, are they funded for major goals? Do they have a plan in place for those what ifs? And let me tell you, whether they have a plan or not, that's going to give you permission to make sure that you're running these target maps. Because if they have a plan in place, we need to assess, is that plan enough? And if they don't have a plan in place, Well, let me show you the implications of if we don't do anything, this could be a significant this could significantly impact your family. Are you sure you don't want to further have these conversations to possibly discuss long-term care further, right? It is part of us being a proactive advisor that we need to be having those conversations, and you're going to be able to do it in a very visual manner through the use of both the asset maps and the target maps. Now, the last aspect of the client expectations are know my options. And this is where we come in as the financial professionals. We need to be the ones evaluating any gaps and goals. And now we're going to meet with our clients so that we can continue to fuel those conversations. And target maps are going to help us solve for those in a matter of minutes, and they're a great visual for presenting to clients, showcasing here's the problem and here's how together we can fix it. And again, the asset map is going to be our starting point always. Every client meeting is an asset map meeting so that we can make sure that we're on the same page. And I'm going to use that asset map and apply my advisor intelligence to say, I have some concerns that, maybe we're not in a good place when it comes to life insurance. I have some concerns that the policies that you currently have maybe wouldn't be enough, right? We as the advisors need to use our advisor intelligence when we take a look at an asset map. And remember, don't be afraid to utilize your colleagues. If you're familiar with the 4 frames of view, that's one of the frameworks that we really press upon. It's part of the asset map process, is really just making sure that you're looking at every single asset map from those 4 distinct perspectives: from a tax perspective, from an investment perspective, from investments, okay? In addition to legal, you name it, right? So we have insurance, we have investments, we have tax, and we have legal. And while some of us may not be experts in every single one of those areas, we likely have people who could be a part of our team that are experts in those other areas, or we can align ourselves with other financial professionals out there who are experts in those areas, so that we are always making sure that we're providing the best advice and looking out for all of our clients' best interest. Now, one of the best things that you can do is, when it comes to introducing asset map for the first time, the best practice that we recommend is that you have to have a sample of what your process and experience is going to be. So have sample clients ready that are related to the demographic that you're working with. And you take a look at your book of business. Do you find that most of the folks that you work with all fall under like one occupation? Is it a particular generation? Maybe you have a book of business that's very diverse. That's perfectly fine. At the end of the day, we have several sample clients that are available to you in your household index, and you can take our different sample clients, you can adjust the information within them to kind of mirror maybe closer to the demographic you're going to be working with. But that really is going to be a best practice, is you can use these sample clients. Now you can create sample clients from scratch as well. So if you want to create from start to finish the ideal fake household and asset map, so that you can use it for prospecting, for introducing asset map for the first time to maybe clients that you've had for quite some time, right? This is now a part of your process. And the great thing about the sample clients is it's all fake information, so that and you can feel confident that when you're showcasing this to a client or a prospect, that, from a compliance standpoint, it's not any real client's information, it's all fake. Right? Now, we recommend that you need to have at least one sample that you know well and that you can use as a conversational piece. And you have samples, like I said, already available to you right now in your household index. Like I said, you can manipulate those pre-built ones to mirror your demographic better, or you can create them from scratch. It's whatever you prefer. And I want to let you know this, you can even create sample target maps within those sample households to really showcase how that you would be able to show your clients and prospects every time we meet. We're also going to be able to evaluate your goals and make sure that we're on track every time that we meet. So let me give you an example of kind of how we could introduce asset maps. So I'm going to do like a quick little example for you. So let's set the scene. Let's say that I'm going to be meeting with new engagement. So imagine that I'm meeting with a new prospect, And right off the bat, I'm probably going to explain my firm, right? Why why me and my colleagues have constructed it the way that we did. And, we have different experts in different areas like planning, tax, investments, legal, etc. And then I'm going to talk about the process. Typically, through all of that, I'm going to be bonding through rapport building. And at the end of the day, what we really need to show, we need to show clients and prospects the path of what they're going to experience on this journey with us, and doing it in a way that shows empathy for their real problems, right? It's so important for us to always remain empathetic, because you'll learn a lot about really asking the questions, looking at an asset map, why some of those financial decisions were made. And a lot of times, like, emotions are a huge aspect, or a huge reason why certain decisions were made. So you're going to learn a lot about your clients through the use of using the asset map, really driving those conversations. And it's important for us to always be empathetic no matter what is shared. Okay, so here's an example of how I might go about this. Mr. and Mrs. Client, now that I've explained to you how my firm works and why it's comprised of the partners, let me talk to you a little bit about the process that we're going to experience together. Typically, clients of financial advisors tend to feel a little overwhelmed based off of the extraordinary amount of information that's given to them by us, their advisors, which, if you're looking for that level of detail, I want to let you know that we absolutely can provide that. But what we have found is that our clients really appreciate it when we simplify their lives. We take the liberty of creating for each of our clients, providing them a single graphic of their entire financial life and all the people that matter most to them on one page. And as an aside, this would be where you have your printed out fake sample client, right? If you're doing this through a remote meeting, you could send them the fake sample asset map prior to the meeting, and you'd want them to be visualizing it while you're talking about it, right? We want them to be able to visualize while we're introducing, so that they can see and say, yeah, this is awesome, I also want to be a part of this. Okay, so back to my demonstration. So after I tell them, we take the liberty of creating one of these for every single one of our clients, because it provides a single graphic of their entire financial life, and all the people that matter most to you would be on this page, because it's critical to us. It's critical to us that we always be on the same page every time we meet, to always need to be clear on what's going on to allow us really help you always reach your goals. And we've invested in a great tool that allows us to do just that. It's called Asset Map. Let me show you an example. Okay, so that could be another transition for you to be able to showcase that sample Asset Map report. And then if you take the time to actually print out or even create some of those sample target maps, you could also include that and showcase and share and say something like this. We also have the ability to show you how funded you are for the major goals that you're looking to achieve. And we can do that every time we meet, not just once every 3 years, but every time we look at your priorities and goals, we're going to be able to see where you stand. Now, how great would that be? Any client or prospect who's going to say, wow, you're going to provide me this single page graphic where I'm going to see my entire financial inventory on one page. You're saying that we're going to have the opportunity to track our goals every time we meet. That is huge. Now, for clients that you've maybe had for some time, you can simply just adjust the language that I just provided. You could say, we've invested in a great tool called Asset Map that allows us to provide you with a single page financial catalog of everything that you have. So every time that we meet moving forward, we're going to make sure that we're on the same page and on track for your goals. And one of the best practices, like I alluded to earlier, is that you need to send this sample asset map prior if it's a remote meeting. If you're going to be doing a meeting in person, 6 feet apart with masks on, you name it, print it out. Have a sample asset map always accessible to you on your desk when you're going to be meeting with prospects and clients, because you never know when you're going to have the opportunity to introduce asset map or talk about it. Okay. All right. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and hop into the application now. Brad, let me check in with you briefly. Can you see my screen first? And second, do we have any questions so far?
No questions yet, and yes, I can see your screen.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Now, now that I've hopped into the application, I'm going to showcase to you some great resources available to you when it comes to introducing Asset Map for the first time. Now, I know that I kind of gave an example, but I also want to leave you with one, you can always watch this recording back, and two, we have a ton of other really great resources that you can use as you are developing how you want to introduce Asset Map for the very first time. So I'll make sure to showcase that. However, prior to showcasing those different materials, I actually want to ask you all a question. So I'm actually going to launch a poll right now, and I'd appreciate it if you could fill it out, because I am interested to know from just a training perspective, what areas within Asset Map would you like to learn about? All right. And and for this particular poll, I'm only allowing you to select one topic. If you continue to join us here for the Accelerate series, I'm always going to kind of start to pepper in some of these polls, because I think it's important to really gather information from all of you to know really what kind of training that you're looking for, and specifically to what those different areas are going to be. So I'm going to leave this up for a couple more seconds here. Please take a moment if you can to fill that out. And again, just from a training perspective, I would love to know what areas within Asset Map you would love to learn more about. All right, perfect. Looks like most of you have voted, so I'm going to close this out. Thank you so much for those of you that have filled it out. And we will take that feedback back and make sure that we start incorporating those areas into the upcoming webinars. So as I mentioned, when we were in the PowerPoint, I talked about how sample clients are one of the best ways that you can use as a resource for introducing Asset Map for the very first time. And keep in mind that for some of you, you may be saying, well, I already have used Asset Map in client meetings, but I want to fine tune how I talk about it. That's perfectly fine. I think it's important for you to just know the resources that are available to you, and then how you choose to, whether you want to use all of them or maybe just pieces of it, that's perfectly fine. We want this to be an extension of you. So let's go over what some of those resources are going to be. So as I mentioned, sample clients, we have some that are going to be pre-built for you, and you can, of course, create a sample from scratch. So first, let's talk about where we find those. To find your list of sample clients that are available to you, you simply just need to click into your household index. So when you log into Asset Map, you're going to click into the household icon. If you're using the new UX, you can just click into the household index. Okay, that's the term that we're using. So once you click into your household index, we could scroll down. This is alphabetical, so I could go to the S's. So I can click on page 2, or don't forget that you can use the search feature up here, and I could simply just type in sample, and all the sample clients that are available to me are going to be listed here as well. So you can see that there's a lot of different sample clients available. Now, if you're a part of our large enterprise, some of your sample clients might look a little bit different. That's perfectly fine. The sample clients are a great resource for you as you're getting comfortable using Asset Map. If you feel that you're already an expert in it, then it's a great opportunity for you to use these fake built households for prospecting and when you're introducing Asset Map in a client meeting. All right, so you can click into any of our different sample clients. If you'd like to manipulate the information, you do have the ability to do so. But if you prefer to kind of just use our defaults, that's perfectly fine as well. If you wanted to create a sample client from scratch, how you would do that to make sure that you're marking them appropriately, that it's a sample, meaning fake information. When you click add a new household up here on the top left, please pay close attention to the household details type, right? The status of this household. So when we select the drop down here, we can just select sample. And based off of marking them a sample, I could then come in and I could add that household from scratch. So for example, maybe you work a lot with teachers, or maybe you predominantly work with, C-suite employees. You can certainly come in here and create your own samples directly from scratch if you'd like, or you can come back in and just find one of our pre-built sample clients, and maybe it's just kind of manipulating the information a little bit to mirror the demographic that you're looking to engage. Okay, so that's going to be the first thing, is just knowing where to find your sample clients, knowing that you can go in, you can adjust the information if you need to, and the fact that you can create them from scratch. Now, when it comes to additional support resources, we actually have a really great option for you that when you click into our help section, so if you click into our resource center, so if you click in and expand our help button, the second option down is going to be where you can search our entire resource database. So if you actually just come in here and you just type in introduce or introduction, I'll just say introducing. If you type in introducing and then click next, it's then going to go in and it's going to take a look at our entire resource database, and then you're going to see here that we have some different options right off the bat. How to introduce asset map in a meeting. Right here, if I click into this, this is the article I wanted to point out to you. We even have a great video here. It's about 7 minutes long. This is our CEO and founder, Adam Holt, and he talks about how he introduces asset maps process to a client or a prospect for the very first time. So even though I walked through an example earlier today, I want you to know that you have additional resources and other examples that you can utilize. So we have a great video here. All right, so even if you just type in introduce or asset map in a meeting, you should be able to find this resource. And then down below, we even provide you tips in this video, right? So these are kind of like coaching points so that you can feel confident when you choose to do it for the very first time. And if you scroll down even farther, we have some additional resources here as well. And the one I'd like to showcase to you here is the asset map script, free download. So if I actually click on this, it's going to open up in a new tab for me. And then if I wanted to download the introduction to prospect script, I just want to showcase to you that we even have a script that gives you line by line things that you can say. Granted, I want you to, of course, make this your own. It needs to be natural. It needs to be an extension of you. But if you are someone who says, I really prefer a video example, or I prefer a written example that I can draw inspiration from, I want you to know that you have it. So if you didn't know that this is available, it is. You can certainly come in here and you could take a look at that. We have examples on what you can say, and then we even have little intent and notes pieces that you can kind of make sure correspond with the different aspects of what you're looking to talk about. All right, so please make sure that you're utilizing those. If you didn't know that they're there, well, now you do, and I hope and I really, really hope that you take advantage of them, because there are some great resources that are available to you. So making sure that you can also use the keyword script if you come into the resource center. So if you just come in here and you just search the word script, that's another great way to be able to find some of these different aspects. Okay, introduction to prospects, how to introduce asset map in a client meeting, just another quick way there as well. And then also we all have another really great article that kind of expands and talks about positioning. So that could be a great resource for you as well. All right, so we've talked about the power of sample clients. We've talked about that you have some scripts and examples of introducing asset map for the very first time. The other thing I want to share with you is that we have a really great marketing flyer that can be a great option for you to utilize as a resource and a piece of material when you're introducing asset map or speaking to asset map in client meetings. And if you didn't know that we have a marketing kit available to you, we do. So if you come back into the help button and you just search for marketing kit, this is where you're going to find it. And in that marketing kit is going to, so you would just click in it here and it'll expand and showcase to you some different options. I'm not going to open it for the sake of time today, but in there you're going to find some different, you'll find our one pager, our flyer that you can utilize. There's some additional aspects in there like a poster, and also our press release if you want to be able to draw inspiration from there. And I already actually opened up what the flyer looks like in a new tab just to save us some time. So this is a really nice one pager here that really just expands and talks about what asset map is, right? It's a tool that allows us to visualize your complete financial inventory on one page and inform progress to financial goals. Right there, this first line, you could take that and you could utilize that in how you choose to speak or introduce asset map or speak to it in client meetings. All right, so then it has other keywords and key sections here you can draw from. This is a great visual that you can share with prospects, with clients. It allows you the ability that once you download it, you can even input your own information here, and then you can also customize and insert your logo. All right. If you're a part of some of our large enterprises, of course, like you'll have to just make sure that it's branded appropriately for guidelines for you to be able to utilize from a compliance perspective. So just keep that in mind as a best practice. But this marketing flyer can be really great as well. So right there, I've supplied you with 4 different things that you can utilize. You can use sample clients in terms of being able to produce those asset map reports. Again, a great option, some that are already pre-built. You can create them from scratch. In addition, you can go into the resource center. You can search the keyword script, and we even have a video of our CEO and founder talking about how he introduces asset map in a client meeting. In addition, you can also download a script to be able to draw inspiration from that, and the same thing here from the marketing flyer. So if you haven't checked out our marketing kit, please make sure that you do so. Some great options in there for you to utilize and continue using moving forward. Coming back into the platform, let's go ahead and move into some best practices for presenting within a client meeting post introduction. So let's say that at this point you already feel comfortable introducing Asset Map. Now let's really move into some best practices for presenting within client meetings. So for example, I'm actually going to use one of our sample clients today, the young family sample. That's who I'm going to utilize as we continue on. So I'm going to go ahead and find them, and we're going to pull them up here. And again, if you have any questions, please make sure you're using the questions area within the GoToWebinar. I have Brad here with us, and he's going to be able to answer any questions you have, and I'll be checking in with you in just a few minutes here as well. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and showcase this here. So I'm going to open up the Young Family Sample Asset Map. So if I was going to meet with this client, prior to the meeting, the first thing I want to do is to make sure that the asset map is up to date to the best of my knowledge. And if I say to myself, well, I haven't met with them in a while, so I'm really not sure, then one of the best things that you can do is to send the current asset map report that you have for the household that you're working on, send it to your client before the meeting. First, so that you can make sure that they come prepared with the information that needs to be updated, right? And that's going to allow us to make sure that it's up to date. So we can ask them to send the changes prior to them coming in, or we could ask for them to just come and bring any updates that need to be made, and we could do it on the fly. But sometimes it can be beneficial for that to ask them to send any changes prior, so that then you can have more meaningful conversations during your meeting rather than having to update the information live. But I know for some of you out there, you might prefer that. That might be part of your process, and that's perfectly fine. So just know that there's a lot of flexibility here, and you can kind of pick and choose what's going to work best for you. But one of the best things we can do is we can send this asset map report to both Neil and Lauren, and I could email it off to them, and I could say, looking forward to our meeting coming up on let's say the 28th. I would love if you could take a look and just let me know if anything needs to be updated, just so that when we meet, we can make sure that we're on the same page and we can really make the most of our time together. And so I could send this off, and then Neil and Lauren could send any corrections to me via email. Hey, actually, the student loans have gone down pretty significantly. Can you update that? Sure. I could come in here and I could make that adjustment. So maybe he said, student loans are actually closer to $20,000 now. I could come in and I could make those updates, so that then when Neil and Lauren come in for their client meeting on the 28th and I project this up onto the screen, right? Remember, Asset Map is designed for any meeting that you're choosing to have, whether it be over the phone, whether it be in person and you project this on a screen, whether it be that you have a tablet and you want them to hold it and envision it with you, whether it be that you're setting up a remote meeting and you're doing it through Zoom or Join Me or GoToWebinar, whatever you choose to utilize. It's just important to make sure that all the information we have is up to date. And so we, from a training standpoint, tend to recommend, send them the asset map prior to the meeting, ask them to send any changes, just so that you can have more meaningful conversations during your meeting together, rather than having to update the information live. All right. But as I also said, on the other side of that coin, if you prefer that to be part of your meeting, Asset Map is built so that you can make those changes on the fly in a matter of seconds. So if you certainly need to update anything live, you can absolutely do so. Another great reason to send an asset map prior to the meeting especially if it's a remote meeting, is because it can be helpful in case the internet goes down. I think more than ever, we all are seeing across the country how winter has certainly sprung, right? In a lot of areas, Texas especially, and in Oklahoma and some places as well, people are kind of losing power. The internet's been kind of going down a little bit. And so one of the best things that we can do as financial professionals is, if we're not going to be meeting in person, right, due to the pandemic, due to weather conditions, etc., if we're hosting a remote meeting, one of the best things we can do is to send a copy of the asset map via email, right, prior to the meeting, so that if we lose internet, I can at least give them a call on the phone and we can still have a conversation. Remember that if you do that, though, you need to use descriptive language. So if imagine that the power goes out and I'm meeting with Neil and Lauren, I can say, all right, well, do me a favor, and if you would, go ahead and pull up, did you download and print that copy of the asset map report that I sent you? Yes, you did. Okay, perfect. So if you're taking a look at that asset map, Neil, if you look up on the very top left, you're going to see that that's your salary, your account manager position. Do you see that? And he's going to say yes. Just from a training perspective, even when we're doing meetings, we need to be intentional with our words, and using words that guide where our eyes are going to look are very helpful, especially when you're working with clients that maybe aren't the most technologically savvy. Maybe they have a hard time seeing the mouse. If I'm not wearing my glasses, sometimes it can be really hard for me to see the mouse on the screen because it's white. And if the screen in the back is white, sometimes it's hard to find it. So just kind of leaving you with some best practices that just make sure that you're using descriptive language. And even if this is projected on a screen and we're running a remote meeting and the power and the internet and everything is great, we should still be using that descriptive language. And I'll also leave you with that the marker tool can be um, a really powerful tool to be able to guide the conversation, to make sure that everyone's kind of tracking with you across the screen. And you can do this in an in-person meeting as well if you have it projected up on a TV or a projection screen or anything like that. But, activating the marker tool up here at the top and then using it as a way to kind of go through and mark, to draw the eyes. If you need to circle anything, you can go ahead and do so. It's just really to be able to have people track with you so that they're following appropriately. So if you haven't used our marker tool before, I highly recommend it. We even have keyboard shortcut keys if you prefer to be able to just turn it on with the different keys that you have on your keyboard rather than having to come up here and turn it on. So if you are looking for what those keyboard shortcuts are, if you just go into our resource center, you can just type in marketing tool marker tool, excuse me. And if you do that, it'll showcase to you what those different keyboard shortcuts are going to be. All right. Another thing I recommend is have your talking points ready. Don't forget that you can, like I said, you can use the marker tool to help clients follow along with you, but make sure that you have your talking points ready of what you want to talk about. And if the purpose of the meeting is to introduce new topics or to fill in missing information, don't forget that you can always use stencils to really help drive those conversations. And one of the things that I recommend the most, and for those of you who maybe are not familiar with stencils, stencils are placeholders that you can overlay onto an asset map. It can be helpful for when you're trying to fill in gaps, because it's a visualization for the clients or prospects to say, for us to say, your peers typically have one or two accounts in these different areas. Do you have any of these? Or you can be very intentional with a stencil, because stencils can be applied in full or in part. Maybe if we're trying to fuel the conversation specifically about, let's say, life insurance, we want to continue this conversation about life insurance and maybe additional life insurance accounts that they may have, you can always apply a piece of the different stencils that are built. Now, as a best practice, what I typically recommend is, while there is success with stencils, let me tell you, they really streamline your workflow. They're a great way. They're a great way not only for clients and prospects to visualize, hey, do you have any of these things? It's also helpful for us as the advisors to remember Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about that. So sometimes I even use stencils for myself as like a reminder that I want to continue the life insurance conversation, or I want to make sure that you don't have any other investment accounts. If those are two things that I know that I want to talk about, I can make sure that I have that stencil applied prior to them coming into the meeting. And that's really what I want you to take away from this, is that I tend to find that applying the stencil prior to the client coming in for the meeting works best. Again, this is just my own personal opinion, but I believe that to work best because then you can make sure that you only keep the placeholders that are applicable to your questions that you're looking to ask or the topics that you're looking to address. Because, for example, if I apply one of these stencils, so if I click on my asset map menu and I click apply stencil up here on the right, now, you're going to have some pre-templated ones. We all have the building block stencils, so we'll use this as an example. Any custom stencils that you built will be down at the bottom as well, so don't forget that you can always create a custom stencil. Here's a couple examples. Like I primarily work a lot with retirement accounts and life insurance specifically. So I created two custom stencils, one specific to the retirement policies I typically see people have that I work with, and one for life insurance for the different products and policies that I typically work with. Okay, so just know that you can be intentional and create custom stencils, which can save you a lot of time. But we also have some really great pre-built ones that you can use. So if I take this building block stencil, anytime you select a stencil, it's going to say, do you want to apply it to the whole household? I tend to like to say no, because when you say no, it opens us up and it says, okay, well, who do you want to apply this to? And maybe in this case, it's the primary client, Neil, who I'm looking to address these areas. Do I want to apply the whole thing? Well, I can. Let me show you what that looks like. So if I take this stencil, what it's going to do is it's going to overlay a variety of placeholders onto this asset map. So what I mean by making sure that we're being intentional of removing any placeholders that are not applicable would be this. I already have a relatively complete asset map for both Neil and Lauren. I've sent it to them and they've said everything's in there, but they said that they do have some additional retirement accounts and things like that. And that's why we're going to be scheduling the meeting to talk. If I take one of those stencils and I overlay, and you can see the stencils here, stencils will always be outlined in light gray and they're always going to have a dollar value in them, right? Because they're a placeholder. We want to create the psychology of, if you have this account, we know that it has something in it, right? It's not zero, but we just don't know how much. So one of the best things you can do is, if you're going to use a stencil, apply it prior to the client coming in, because then you can go through and we can say, okay, well, here's an example. This particular stencil I overlaid, it has a piece in it, a placeholder for salary. Well, we already put in his salary, so I don't need that. So I'm going to click into it and I'm going to delete it. Right? And the logic for me of why I believe that to be a best practice is, why would we want to have a placeholder for a tile that we already have filled out, right? Then it just kind of we need to be intentional about why things are on the asset map. So if there's a placeholder, we want to be intentional as to why. Now, if they had a lot of missing information, then maybe applying that whole stencil would make sense, because we're really just trying to gather anything. We're trying to really provoke the thought in their mind of, do you have any of these different types of financial instruments? So I'm going to clear this stencil out because I'm going to remove it from view. So what I did there is I applied the stencil in full. You can also apply stencils in part. Let me show you how. So for example, prior to them coming in for their meeting on the 28th, I want to continue to have a life insurance conversation with them. And they have alluded that they think that they maybe don't have enough insurance, or that there's like one or two policies that they like need to get the statements for. And I want to be prepared for that, right? So what I can do is I can click apply stencil. I can select building blocks. I can select apply to entire household, no. And what I can do is I can select this drop down here, and instead I can be very intentional and say, I only want to apply the life insurance policy placeholders from this stencil onto the asset map for Neil. If I click apply, notice in a second that the only placeholders are going to populate are those three pieces. So I now have used our pre-templated building block stencil, but I only used a part of it. And if I wanted to, of course, engage the spouse, I would want to do the same thing. So I just have to come back in here, select building blocks, select no. I'm going to do life insurance again, but this time I want to apply it to Lauren. Right? We should always be engaging the spouse. I'm a huge proponent of that. So now I've added in these placeholders so that now when they come in for this meeting, we can have a conversation. But I've applied this placeholder and you'll notice that they already have group term policies. So maybe I don't need that placeholder tile. Even though I've already overlaid this, I can click into the tile and I can delete it if I don't need it. And again, I'm using this as an example for you so that you can remember to be intentional. If you're going to put placeholders on the asset map, just make sure that there's a purpose as to why they're there. Is it because that's a topic that you want to introduce or you want to dive into next? Is it a reminder for you so that you don't forget to ask questions that you have? And you can even click into one of these placeholder tiles if you want. You can come into the notes tab. And if you want to write some bullet point notes so that you don't forget what the questions that you wanted to ask, you can certainly do so. And we have a very great resource that you can get out of our resource center. It's called Asking the Right Questions. And so if you go into our resource center and you just type in ask the right questions, it'll take you to where you can download this document. And here is a really nice example of some key questions that you may want to think about asking. Doesn't mean you have to. You might already be asking these questions. But one of the big frameworks that's a part of the asset map process is the 5 whys, right? Every asset map we're looking at, finding those 5 different questions of, is there, why is your 401k still, you're still hasn't been rolled over yet? Is that intentional? Is there a reason for that? Right? Oftentimes it's like, oh, I just like, I haven't called to like roll it over yet. Like, I know that's something that I need to do, right? Asking the 5 whys so that we can find out why certain decisions were made, why certain financial instruments are on the asset map. So I just want to leave you with another really great resource, Asking the Right Questions. This can be really handy for you to utilize, even if you just kind of memorize this and you can incorporate this into your client meetings that you have. I just want you to know that this is a great resource. We have a lot of advisors that use this and love it. And you can even take some of these questions and you can, you can type them into the notes of a placeholder if, you want to be intentional and make sure that you're asking exactly what you're looking to ask. So I just want to showcase this to you, that this is another great resource available. And you can find that by going to our resource center, which you can always just click on, visit our support center this way as well by clicking the question mark up on the upper right hand side. When you do that, it will expand in a new tab for you, and then you have the ability to just go ahead and type in asking the right questions, just like this. And there's going to be that report that I was talking about that's going to have those different questions that you can think about asking. All right, can be really valuable there for you as well. All right, Brad, before I move in and I kind of wrap us up a little bit by talking some best practices behind presenting target maps, let me just check in with you. Do we have any questions?
We had a couple come in, LJ, but I've taken care of them. One thing we might want to reiterate here too is just that the folks at larger enterprises, there are some restrictions from what they have available from a marketing perspective. So what you guys
Yes.
do see within the support center is what you do have access to.
That is a great point. Thank you so much for reiterating. And please just keep that in mind if you are a member of some of our larger enterprises, right? It just depends on compliance and the additional factors. Okay, so let's go ahead and kind of wrap up with our last area before we kind of finish up with some Q&A. And I just want to talk about some best practices behind presenting target maps. So if you plan to present target maps in a meeting, again, just make sure that they're up to date. And so when we come into the target map section here, I can click in. It's really important that you make sure that I'm gonna say this again. This is a personal opinion, but something that I've just learned being a trainer for, in fintech for the last like 6 years. Naming criteria is huge. When you go in and you add a financial instrument, You need to be intentional about your naming criteria, about the location. Anytime you create a target map, be intentional with your naming criteria. And the reason being is because that's how it's going to be presented, right? So you can see here up the top, I ran a retirement target map for Neil and Lauren. I first created their baseline. Their baseline is based off of the information that they've given me. You're going to retire at 65, you want to spend this during retirement, etc. Well, I create the baseline first, and then as a best practice, I then clone it and I make a copy, and then I created different iterations. And I was intentional in renaming them as well. So first, I'm able to show them this is your baseline. This is if we don't do anything different, if we keep running the course that you say that you're going to run, right? We obviously need to have a discussion about this. Now, you mentioned that you might be willing to work a couple years later and retire at 67 instead. So I wanted to show you the impact of what that would do, right? We created another iteration. Keep in mind, this is a sample client, sample information. So I know that these aren't at like 100%, right? A lot of our sample clients are kind of designed to fail a little bit when it comes to the target map so that we can then, be very intentional about like how we choose to create solutions and things like that from a training perspective. So I then took this particular target map that I ran and I cloned it and I created another version and I showed them getting a 6% rate of return instead of a 5% rate of return, right? So just to be able to showcase the different implications. So the biggest takeaway here of what I'm trying to get at is just when it comes to best practices for target maps, remember the cloning feature. I always recommend creating your baselines for the original target maps that you're going to run. So maybe a baseline for retirement, a baseline for loss of life, a baseline for long-term care, etc. Because then you can always clone them and then you can add in other variables. Here's what it looks like if we ran it at 5%. Here's what it would look like if we ran it at 4. Here's what it would look like if you spent $50,000 less. I mean, nobody likes being told to spend less money, right? But we could come up with those different solutions. We could showcase those different iterations. So when it comes to presenting target maps in a client meeting, the most important thing is just when you click into the asset map, the target map, one of the best places you can start is where it automatically takes you. So anytime you open up a target map, it takes you to step 3, which is what it means. And the reason why it does that is intentional, because especially if you're going to be presenting in a client meeting, this summarization right here is a really solid explanation of what it is that we're looking at, right? Based on the calculation, this target map is 40% funded to meet the capital required to fund retirement expenses. And assuming a hypothetical 5% net return on capital, the amount of additional capital required to fund this need today is $835,000. Or we could put it in a monthly amount, which is about $3,000, right? So I just like to showcase this to you here, that it's always good to start on the what it means tab first. You can literally read this right off the bat, right? Explain what it is exactly that we're looking at here. What's our shortfall? How much would we possibly need to be saving every single month for the next some odd years up until retirement, right? And then if you want to dive into these other areas like the what you want tab, this is what we're solving for. This is what you have, the things that are checked, right? We have to be able to explain what it is we're looking at if we're going to use these in a client meeting. So we can say everything that's checked is going to be, what you have that you're going to use towards your retirement. So those are going to be things like Social Security and your qualified accounts. Is there anything else that we can apply here, right? If we wanted to have an interactive goal based meeting, we could certainly do that. Now, a big question that we get is even before you get to this area, a lot of advisors will ask me and they'll say, Leah Jean, I love target maps, but I just don't really know, if they're not asking me to run them, like I feel weird running them and then, showcasing it because they didn't ask me to do that. Okay, that's fair. So I want to tell you something. In the reports tab, up here, up on the right, in a household, we have a document that you can use. This is one of the asset map frameworks. Okay, we have 3 frameworks, the asset map frameworks that are a part of the asset map process, which is the 5 whys, the 4 frames, and the 6 L's. The 6 L's are the financial fire drills, and I would argue that the 6 L's are a vital step that you need to make sure that you are either, asking the questions behind the scenes, or, incorporating this report in your meetings with your clients, because the 6Ls give you permission to run the target maps. Here's why. I've already downloaded a copy of this so that you can see what it looks like. Here is the 6Ls. This is the financial fire drills. Now, the 6Ls are 6 common areas that we see disrupt households. And this is just something that we've seen happen for, years and years and years. Like, these are the 6 common areas that disrupt households, and we want to know, do we have a plan? For example, Neil and Lauren, if we have a liquidity need, do we have a sufficient access to capital? Do you have an emergency reserves account? Oh, you do? Okay, perfect. We can mark that, right? What about long-term disability? What about loss of life? Well, loss of life, we have life insurance. Oh, great, great. We mark yes, right? We can have notes. We could print this out. We could send it to them. They could fill it out. Either way, here's what I'm going to tell you. If they say, yes, we have a plan, right there gives you permission to go run a target map to make sure that the plan is enough. We wouldn't be doing our due diligence if someone says, oh yeah, we have a plan, we have life insurance, are we just going to trust that? No, we're going to run a loss of life target map, and we're going to make sure that the insurance that they have is sufficient enough. And something that sets us apart is that our target maps run everything in today's dollars. That's valuable, right? Because things 30 years down the line can change drastically. Can you tell me what the weather's going to be like 20 years from today exactly? You can estimate, but it's an estimation, right? So what sets us apart is that target maps, they take these very complicated concepts and they make them digestible. A client can sit down in front of you and you can say, here's how much money we would need today to make sure that your family is taken care of. What can we pull from for funding to put towards this goal? And if we can't pull from funding, for loss of life, then maybe we need to have a conversation about getting you some additional insurance. We can calculate what it's going to be for a monthly amount. So we either need to save this much every single month moving forward. Oh, you can't save that much? Okay, well, guess what? I'm going to have you fill out an application because I have a couple different policies with premiums that are significantly less than that amount that it's listing here for you to save a month. Let's have that conversation, right? Have them fill out an application. So the 6Ls, where there's real value here, all right, this is a key framework that you should be implementing, is because, again, if they have a plan, meaning that they say, yes, I have life insurance, yes, I have long-term care insurance. Okay, great, great. I'm still going to check to make sure it's enough, because if it's not, I owe that to them to have that conversation, to showcase so that we can make a decision. And they may not want to proceed because they may say, well, I'm really not concerned. There are a lot of people that don't have long-term care policies, right? So what is their option? It's to self-fund. Well, if you're not concerned about long-term care, they can mark that here. I'm still going to run a target map because that still gives me permission. You said you don't have a plan in place. I completely understand. However, I wanted to show you the implications of, if this happens, your family is going to be significantly impacted. We might leave them in a very disruptive place if we don't take action now. Is that something that you'd like to talk about further? And it may be very possible that they say, no, I'm still not concerned. Either way, at the bottom here, we can have them sign that. And then, we talk about this a lot in training. It's like, if someone's child comes to you, 20, like 10 years down the line, and they're like, why didn't you ever make the recommendation that they get the long-term care? Like, isn't that your job? You should have done that. You can say, I did. I ran the analysis. I showcased to them that the significant impact that would happen. They said they weren't concerned about it. I gave them some options for policies where the premiums would be low, and they just weren't interested. They didn't want to discuss it further. Right? So the 6Ls not only give you permission to make sure that if there's a plan in place, if these things happen, it gives you permission to make sure that you are running the target maps to test to see as well. And whether that be that they have a plan in place, let's make sure the plan is enough, or if they don't have a plan in place, here's the impact of what that could look like. All right, hopefully that makes sense. Again, where I just want to wrap up today is just knowing that you have your support resources available to you. When you expand our help menu, don't forget you can chat in directly to our team. You can search our resource database for different materials. You can always email into our team if you don't have time to chat. And then just make sure that you kind of check out some of these different announcements down there at the bottom as well. All right, let's talk about what's coming next. And I know I'm going to go like a minute over, and I apologize, but I promise you it's worth it. I want to showcase to you what's coming next. So first, I want to say thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to actually have Brad pop a survey into the chat right now, and I would love for you if you could take 2 seconds. I'm serious. It's only 2 questions. I would love for you to let me know what you thought of today's webinar, and if you got something out of it, I would love to hear that. Okay. I'd love to hear if you would like to learn more about other areas as well, or if you wish that something else had been covered. That's perfectly fine. All feedback is welcome. Please take a moment to fill out the survey. Brad's also going to post a link that's going to take you to all the different areas where if you are interested in signing up for next month's Accelerate series webinar, you can certainly do so. Next month's webinar is actually going to be really exciting because what we're going to be talking about is navigating the new asset map experience. So if you didn't know already, you can navigate into the new UX, right? We kind of have a soft rollout happening. So eventually we will completely transition over into our new UX design. Right now, we're allowing you the ability to toggle to and from our classic view, which is when you log into asset map, what you see, and then checking out the new UX. So I'll show you how to do that in just a second. If you'd love to leave us a review, or if you'd like to find out how to get Asset Map for free, all these different aspects, signing up for next month's webinar, they're going to be included in the one link that Brad is going to post in the chat right now. So for the new UX, where I want to conclude, I just want to show you how, if you're interested in checking it out, when you log into the Asset Map application, if you just click on your main menu up here on the top right, which is your name, you can just click right here where it says show beta UX. And what it's going to do is it's going to take you into the new UX design. All right. And then from here, if we wanted to check out what it looks like, we can go to a sample. We could go to a real household that we're working on. And I got to tell you something. The design is not much different from what we are used to, right? We didn't design this to change it up on you. We gave it a fresh facelift, if you will, but it really is designed for speed of advice. You move a lot quicker in the application through the new UX. We spent a lot of time designing this. We have an incredible team, and there's going to be some new innovations that are going to be rolling out with the new UX as well, but you do have early access to kind of come in and get comfortable. So I just want to really encourage you to spend some time in here. You'll notice that your menu bar now appears over on the left. Everything you need, quick access. You can come over here and take a look. If you hover over anything, it'll tell you what it is. If you right click, if we come to the over here, if you right click on the actions menu, you'll also find a quick menu available to you there as well. So just kind of wanted to showcase that. So anyway, please check out the new UX. It's fantastic. I'm really excited about that. Next month's webinar is really going to be all about kind of navigating the new experience. So if you haven't spent some time in there, it'll kind of be walking you through how to get around and how to really work efficiently. And then other than that, if you just take a moment to fill out that survey, I'd be super appreciative. And other than that, Brad, any final questions before we wrap up today?
No, we are good to go, LJ.
Thank you so much. Well, everyone, I hope you have a fantastic remainder to your Thursday. One more day till the weekend. I hope you have a great weekend as well. Thank you so much for being here, and I'd love to see you at next month's webinar.